So we went through this big trauma, this big catalyst on society, right? And as always happens with trauma, some people stay asleep. They stay in that trauma. They stay in the denial. Denial. Oh yes, denial. I remember that. I was there. I remember when I was sitting in science class. It was 7th grade or 6th grade. I think it was 7th grade, because that was the year that I had the teacher who had orange nail polish on. And I wrote something about orange nail polish in a different essay for a different class. It was a mystery I wrote called Duck à l'orange. And I remembered suddenly the sexual molestation that happened to me. It ended when I was 11, so it was not that long after, right? It haunted me to my core as I sat there, and I thought, no, that didn't happen. Yes, that did happen. That did happen. No, that didn't happen. And I knew it happened, but I could not tolerate that feeling, and there I was in science class. At what, 12 years old? What are we in 7th grade? 12 going on 13? And I felt shame and guilt for it. More shame, right? You know, guilt just festers into shame. And I had to suppress it. But I knew it was always there. I just always had to keep suppressing it to go on till it just kept bubbling up, right? That's what happens. You can heal. I healed. And I am going to share more of my sexual stories. Let's just jump onto this element of breaking out of the matrix. Sex. Sex can be an amazing, beautiful, transformative experience. One where we commune with another or ourselves and the divine through them together. Most people don't know that on this planet yet. That sounds like silly stuff. Why? Why? Because the average person has to view pornography to get off, right? And I felt for a long time very like, how am I going to talk about this in my journey as I've awakened? I have been a professional dominatrix for 6 years. This is my anniversary month. And before that, I was on a sexual journey. I've been on one for years. When I started to awaken, 2020 was a big boiling point. I had many rock bottoms and upticks for since 2011, since I started my journey, my spiritual journey, my health journey. I call it my health journey, not just my healing journey. It's a health journey here that we're on. But I was really shedding traumas by 2020. They were boiling up to the surface. It was horrible. I was plagued by so many things, like many of us, right? I wasn't alone, but I felt alone a lot. And anyway, I hit the road. I just want to stay in the car after taking the piss of life. I decided, fuck this, I'm not going to be able to survive in this apartment and just make content, clips, fetish content as a dominatrix and sell just that. It was always a side component of it, of the brand. And I put heart into it as much as I could. As close as I could, I make it to their real experience that these mostly men who see me would come to experience in person.
Just like all the way up. Power. That's right. Physical enforcements. Rooting the earth with your weak seed. Sense of purpose. Yes. You'll get to choose. You're going to do everything that I fucking want you to. Spread it. This one too. No, they
But I would make like 4 a month, 4 to 6. That's it. You know, it was a component, a complement. My bread and butter was sessions, but we all closed down up in New York and many other places. And I was battling burnout. Burnout. I know burnout is a component of spiritual awakening for a lot of us because we have to go into our purpose. That's part of the spiritual journey, is to go into our purpose, right? To this other higher consciousness calling. And to iterate this is going to come out like some people are going to take it wrong and blah, 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 and I'm going to give fucking shit. Okay? I don't give a shit. I'm going to fucking talk about this. And if I have to make 20 videos about this till it comes out and people understand without all of these silly biases about sex work, my points. Not to meander too far at this moment about this, but I want to make clear early on right now that I am not here to shit on sex work. Sex work is arguably, and most likely, the oldest profession in the book. We are healers in our own right, but society does not want to see us as such, and sometimes we can use our powers to benefit or not benefit society, just the same as a doctor can. Think about it. Or a different kind of healer. Think about that. Or anyone else, technically. We all have the potential. And that's what I'm talking about a lot in different videos, is consciousness. So I want to make clear here, okay? I want to make clear that I am not trying to bring down sex work and be like, I am so over it because it is so low vibe. No. I learned so much from my career, but I awakened to a new purpose as a light worker. And I always knew that I was going to most likely go into coaching or become some kind of therapist or a healer. But I promised myself that I would never do that if I was still experiencing survivor guilt. Everything unfolded. I don't live with survivor guilt currently. That has left the building, or the temple. That has left the temple. I like how that sounds. But anyway, my point also now is to go back to saying that sometimes we just have to get it out. We have to get out our story until it runs its course. And that's exactly what happened with my fetishes. Fetishes that I transcended. I transcended them. And that's a subject that we can go deeper on in another video. But there were particular fetishes that when I became conscious of them, I was freaked out. I got so freaked out, and somebody that a girl I was seeing many years ago said, "Oh, honey, it's just a fetish. Relax." Oh my God. So I started looking deep research, and this led me on part of my journey, right? And so I was passionate about this journey as a dominatrix, because there is a lot that I could be passionate about, that one can be about BDSM practice and kink. You can do it consciously. It gave me a conscious guidelines, a blueprint for sexual practice. It really did, and it can, if we do it properly, right? And it's so creative. But I got burnt out. I could really go into the many things that burnt me out, and it wasn't always the way that the online culture started to change or what I started to realize about it. But a big part of it in terms of producing fetish content became that the content always caters to the viewer, which is not necessarily the same thing in an in-person scene. The clientele is different of who is going to buy clips, who's going to come in person. There is sometimes a crossover, and I have my hunches about what the reasons for this is. And some of that what it is, what I've gathered over time, and not just me, but other doms who have been doing this for many years, is that the viewer always gets the candy. They always get the satisfaction in the end of the clip, even if that satisfaction is denial, actually. And so that's not always the case when it is an in-person session. Now, this is going to become way nuanced here, and this is, I'm sort of digressing, but maybe you're curious. When someone comes to see me in person, they, you know, they don't know what I'm going to give. In fact, I don't know what I'm going to give either. And this is what separates doms that are always catering to the submissive and just only service topping, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? And a dom who is actually dominant is giving you, it's a matter of giving the sub what they actually need, which is a healing thing, right? Instead of what they want and what they desire. And this, yes, this is becoming nuanced, but I started to feel that producing fetish content and figuring out, oh, this is selling well, and oh, just make more of it. This was becoming burning out. It was burning me out. And I was not feeling very aligned with always giving the viewer a satisfaction thing. Granted, I want, of course, a healing and satisfying experience for the submissive or the respectful fetishist that is submitting to me. But there was something that was not it was not in alignment, and it was depleting me. There are more and more things that I could note about what caused the burnout, not just in creating content, but in other things too, but just in creating content. I can note even more than that. That wasn't initially the point of my video, but the point is to talk about sexuality openly, to talk about that. One point in here is that sexual healing it's not always about this gratification, actually. And it's about nourishment, yes, but healing, let me remind us that healing, it often entails a lot of pain in order to heal. This is why a lot of people don't want to heal. I don't blame them, because there's a lot of elements of healing after 13 years of me studying and doing my own healing and doing personal development, to know that it kind of sucks a lot sometimes. Yeah, it hurts, which is what I like about being a dom, actually, is that I am a person's destroyer. I am their catalyst. I get to embody their catalyst. And so for me, it's not all about giving them the satisfaction right now, right? You know, of course, I throw in a little bit of that. And part of when someone truly is a submissive, and there's different things going on, right? This is why we are called fetish providers. You know, there's a difference. You know, you're in a service industry, so it's like you're providing this fetish service. But there's a lot of people who seek us out who want a true dom. And they know I'm a true dom because actually it's me. I've had to reorientate myself in this business so many times that I'm not here for simple gratification, which has hurt my income sometimes, actually, because I know I can easily take well, maybe I can't easily take someone's money, actually, because this is why I didn't work so much all these years, because it wasn't in alignment for me to just earn money. I'm here to help people heal, right? And so a part of that is, I just went on a tangent there, so I lost my place a bit. Shit. But it's right, is that some seek true, they want this true experience with a true dominant. And it's like, are you ready for that, actually? Because that means that you are letting go. You're truly submitting to not just your fantasy. I mean, your fantasy might actually entail something that is painful. Are you ready for that? That is something that does come up also in sessions. Some people want to go through an experience that they saw in a fetish or porn content, right? And they seek it out, and when they get that reality, it's not actually that satisfying to them. Maybe sometimes it is, but it's its own thing. I myself have experienced that a lot of times. I remember I was so into orgy porn. I had a lot of orgy fantasies growing up. And it's not the same as the reality, let me tell you. It's not the same. But I'm digressing a bit. It's not always the same. Fantasy and reality are not the same. You may get the reality and it's its own thing. You may enjoy it, you may not. Other things come up in the way. You discover things about yourself, and that is something I'm also passionate about, is to actually be able to open up that experience for people and be able to do the aftercare afterwards too, which, let's face it, you don't really get to do that in clips. You don't, unless someone seeks you out and wants to converse with you about them in your fan base, maybe. You don't always even get to give that out in an in-person session. I do my best, but not all people who come to submit to me want aftercare either. So it's something that it's like, a lot of people enter the profession from lifestyle, and it becomes a little bit soulless for them too, because they want this experience that they're like, no, I only want to play with subs that want aftercare because I need aftercare myself too. And when you're doing this as a professional, you have to be accepting that not everyone wants aftercare, and you might have to be okay with that. Or maybe it's a limit for you to establish that you only give aftercare. And you have to show up for yourself, of course, and do your own aftercare, which is why DOMs need to do a lot of self-care. Woo! I don't know what I was splicing this onto next. Let's go to it. As I sit here editing this 8 months later, and having been through a whole burnout cycle, couple of them since then and before, and healed from that and expanded through that, it behooves me to put this in here because I don't know who you are. I know a couple people who watch my videos and know me personally, but I don't know you yet. And I am aware, though, that the world has a lot of viewpoints around sex work, which means I'm going to probably devote a lot of videos to conscious sex work. But people come in all the time with a lot of snap judgments around this, and can be, first and foremost, pretty harmful, actually, if you actually care about, not harming others, and limiting to your own scope of consciousness. Those snap judgments are not always the reality of this. They are not always what everyone who does sex work is like or experiences. When I'm speaking about sex work, I'm speaking from my personal experience. I may have gathered also the experiences that I've heard from other sex workers, but this is a deeply nuanced profession, and people working this profession, it is people from all different walks of life. Contrary to what people think, okay? There are people who come from all different walks of life, all different genders, all different places of the world. That's one of the things I enjoy so much about this profession. It's very diverse. That's the word I was looking for. Diverse. I commend those who have done this for year after year after year, who have like decades and decades of a profession going, because it can become soulless at times, especially if we're not doing self-care. And sex workers have to do extra self-care, in my opinion, just the same as any other healing professional must do. It's essential because people are coming to you all the time with their problems or their shadows, etc., etc., etc. And we're also subjected to the societal stigma on top of it all. I mean, society is so shut down around the topic of sex in general. And then we're sex workers. So can you imagine how much of the collective conditioning, the collective trauma, the collective shadows are being orientated around us? It's pretty crazy to think about it. So with that being said, we must do extra self-care. Let's meander down that lane for just a second here. I do a lot of meandering, and I will cover this in another video. But when I say that sex work can be soulless over time, what I really mean here is that, firstly, let's take note that many jobs can become soulless. When I was a teacher, I got a lot of burnout, not to the same extent as sex work, but I was trudging through burnout. And sometimes, and a lot of teachers would agree with this, it's a matter of the administration or the parents that burn you out. It's not even the students sometimes. It is the situation of the system often. And so soulless, many people work soulless jobs, okay? Any job that does not align with right livelihood, usually in Buddhism, can become soulless. Any job that goes against your value system, that depletes your energy and does not actually fill up your cups and nourish you and make you feel like you have an impact on the people that you're serving, can become soulless, right? But what happens with sex work is that because it is so stigmatized by most people, you suffer this extra aspect of soullessness. You can potentially. And that is totally another topic I should put in a different video. The clientele that you are serving as a dominatrix or a fetish producer, right? A fetish content producer is very different than those who come to see you in person. It's not the same as the men who come in person. That's a very different, what's the word? With a D, help me here. Demographic. Thank you. It's a different kind of demographic. You've got to really, really have a lot of trust to come in person and see a dominatrix and go through like all my beginning protocol to even get a session. But even so, I tried to come back after 4 months of just wandering and just exploring, and I just couldn't work. And it just snowballed, this break that I was taking. It snowballed, and I had to force myself back. And I came back with a bang because the goddess spoke through me and got me out of a very sticky situation that I'm going to read something to you about in another video. And I had to go into the debauchery that I went through in this experience, where basically I was caught in the web of an incubus. And some don't believe in that, but this is a serious thing. We can collect very negative energies within us. This is why treating our body as a temple, as I did not treat it in my 20s especially, before I found kink, really. Kink gave me a guideline, actually. I was part of that kind of hookup culture thing that I'm just not all about at all, and I think it's terrible for society. I was in patterns of re-victimization a lot, which we'll talk about in another video, because it's a very lengthy topic, I suppose. But I was also a commitment phobe. Till I met someone at one point he healed me sexually in a great way. In 2014 or 2015 that was. And I realized I was falling for him. But I knew from the start of our sexual relationship together that he wasn't looking for a relationship at the time. He's a great guy. And one of the great things is that he never strung me along. He was honest from the start about what he was and wasn't looking for. And so, of course, I chose to break it off, and it ended consciously. It was the first conscious uncoupling that I had. He healed me. Sexual relationships in general, they can, make or break us. They can heal or harm us. And that's a very powerful thing. And when we're not conscious about that, we end up going into the harmful territory usually, where we're just operating from a low level of consciousness or no consciousness really. But when we raise our consciousness, we're able to enter this terrain where we can choose the healing. We can choose the health even. But let's face it, many people don't treat their body like temples. I didn't always treat my body like it was my temple. Many people don't treat their bodies like the temple they are. Of course we don't, if we're just feeding it garbage. If we're willing to share our body and our energy with those who don't even value us, who haven't even proven themselves to us. When we masturbate to media that shows a basic mechanical view of sex instead of actually connecting with pleasure firsthand, energetically, and experiencing true intimacy. And that applies to with ourselves or with a lover. But here's the thing. We're going to keep on doing those habits that make us suffer till we become conscious that we're doing it. And until, well, truly, we suffer enough. Nobody awakens without suffering enough. And then once we suffer, we start to awaken and we start to choose the healthier, wiser path that honors our body, our mind, and our spirit holistically. Sometimes you got to pull yourself away from the habit. Like, pull yourself away. And it's like a child is kicking and screaming and crying for its toys. So this is what happened. Went out on the road, I was traveling. I was communing in nature. I was getting restored in nature, and my energy was changing even more. And I was just, so much was happening. It was just taking off for me. And I wound up in Sedona, of all places, which is what Mistress Ariana Chevalier, who was a wonderful mistress who was very generous to me back in New York. I used to rent from her at her amazing dungeon that's now closed up. Things changed. Things have changed in these last few years, right? And she told me when I called her up, said, I'm leaving New York. I'm going to give you the keys. Should I meet you? What should I do? And we talked on the phone a bit. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'll go to Vegas. People say the rent is cheap. And she's like, don't go to Vegas. Go to Sedona. It's beautiful. And I was like, oh, all right. I looked it up while we were on the phone. I was like, oh, it is really beautiful. It took me 2 months to get there. Yeah. Roughly, maybe less. I get there and around end of January or middle of January, so less than 2 months. And that's when things really took off, of course. A lot took off. I was sent a lot of lessons, a lot of tests that I had to process, catalysts, more of them, cleansing the system. They're not very enjoyable, no. That's how healing goes, isn't it? No pain, no gain, though, huh? And while I'm there and I can't work, lo and behold, every man, a guy keeps coming up to me and just trauma dumping onto me. Telling me especially how confessing their pornography addictions. They don't even know what I do. Or they're crying to me. Even this happened before I got to Sedona. As soon as I hit into the Four Corners, into Arizona, this man at this rest stop, I was talking to him, and he tells me about, you remind me of my wife who died. And it was like, I guess I signed up for this maybe to hear people talk about their traumas. But here's the thing. I'll listen. I know you've been through a struggle. I have the capacity to listen. But don't just offload your story and then forget about doing the personal growth work required to heal. It behooves me, especially having intimate knowledge of men. So many men are suffering, and they rarely go to seek therapy or counseling or a coach or another form of healing and do personal development to get healthy. I speak with a fire because I know about this. But I also have a tenderness for this situation for men. Of course I do. I have a great love for men. But also because I know that this is a generational conditioning, cultural conditioning that men have had for them to be suppressing their emotions so that they are not emotional, so that they are not vulnerable, etc., etc., etc. And then they just stuff them. And if things get really bad, they commit suicide. We know that this is an epidemic now. The time has come for men to transcend these patterns that have limited them, to transcend the programming. I know that this is possible because it is happening right now for so many men on this planet. I couldn't be more passionate about such thing. I am not one of those women who has hatred for men. Yes, we are aware that there are women who have hatred for men. I will address this in a different video because this is going to be long-winded, like the rest of these topics, but they're juicy, aren't they? I love men. I have more best friends that are men than that are women. I have seen some of the most despicable things that men can do. And I have also seen some of the most tender, incredible, generous, transcendent things that men can do. I have been the receiver of some of those things. Thank you. And so as a sex worker, I'm going to divulge into something else here because men need to hear this, is that many men go to see a sex worker instead of going to therapy, when what they really need is therapy or a legit coach, not to just go see a sex worker. And this is a subject for another video of why men go to see a sex worker for not just sex. This is a big misunderstanding also by much of society, that they think that most men who go to see a sex worker, especially an escort who might be full service, as it's called, many people believe that men are just going to see a sex worker to get laid. This is not always the case. Many men end up just wanting to talk. They arrive very nervous. They want to be around the feminine, a feminine aspect that does not judge them, a feminine aspect that has the capacity to just listen to them. And we hear them, we hear them, what they have to say, right? Many men end up just wanting to cuddle. Or some of them offload their traumas, right? Okay, this is the reality of it. And I am urged to talk about this so that men understand, so that men wake up actually and see, oh, have I been doing this pattern? Have I been chasing sex or something that is not actually what I need, which is to clear out a pattern, to actually discuss this and transcend. But the masculine, this is the thing, the masculine especially, but especially men on this planet, they are still not going to do therapy. They're still not going to see a coach. They're stuck in their dismissive avoidant strategies where they just go into detachment. And that's not the same as non-attachment. Detachment is like, oh, it didn't happen. Whatever. I'm just gonna just play ball now. Just gonna go out with the boys and drink some beers. And here's the thing, I know so much about men too after all these years. So many men have no one to talk to because their male friends, a lot of the time, they don't have the capacity to listen to their friends' problems, to hold space emotionally for their friends' problems, because they don't have the capacity yet to do it for themselves. And that is why, if you're in that position, you need to foster that within and to also seek some kind of healing, but we must foster it within. That is also one of the most important aspects of healing. To not just become dependent on another person, on a coach, therapist, healer, or anyone else. And then you have some men are very lucky that they join men's groups, and hopefully it's high vibrational, or they're trying to be up the vibration there and really help each other out, But I know from the words of men that the brotherhood is dead. The brotherhood is dead. Well, it's time for you guys to rejuvenate it, to resuscitate it. I can't do that. I'm not a brother. Sometimes I feel like I'm a brother, though. And with that being said, my rant is done. I'm going to go cold plunge. It's day 16. Sweet 16. Oh yeah, let's end this by saying that I got back to work and I could no longer make clips. Many of these things that I used to do, I couldn't do anymore. And then the amount of money that I would make was usually smaller and smaller. And that's okay. You know why? Because our sexual desires, our boundaries, all of it change. It's fluid. And I've known that. I have known that for years and years, and I have told that to others. And they have gained confidence on their journey of aligning with their sexual true north because of the things that I have told them, things that I believed in. But I had to go through this whole journey that I'm talking about here and more, even since this last filming. It's incredible. And so I could no longer do certain things that I even used to enjoy. And it wasn't because, at first there were things that I questioned, like I was on this spiritual ego high horse of like what's good and bad and what's stigmatized. And I can address that in different videos to come. But whenever there is a hesitation, that means I'm not having a real pull. It's not an authentic pull in that direction. I honor that. And so that meant I'm not going to make clips. Sometimes I make a little ditty on my phone here and I put it up on Twitter and it's fun, and that still resonates. But it's nothing like I had to investigate everything from the bottom up, from the top down, of what still is an enjoyment for me, what still is aligned with my mission, with my philosophy. I revisited my entire philosophy as a mistress, and I actually didn't have to change anything. I just had to change certain things that I offered, maybe, that I just was like, that's not really my thing right now. And some things that I took off of what I wanted to do, I wanted to say off the menu, I just didn't promote them as much or whatever. I didn't engage in them. Those things have changed too. I maybe started to like them again. We change, right? Is what I'm saying. But this is my point of another video coming up, is to how to find your sexual true north. And that means honoring. It means honoring oneself when something is not really right for us. Not necessarily of what it is for someone else and what society defines it as. But with that being said, is this causing suffering to others or harm? And as nuanced as this is going to sound, is this causing suffering, and not a good kind of suffering, to yourself? It's going to sound nuanced if you understand BDSM, and I can't really get into all of the nuances right now of what is a good pain, what is something that legit is causing us suffering. So I had to honor that, is what I'm saying. And we've also got to honor ourselves. We've got to check in with ourselves. I've even written a big blog about this. It's going back to 2018. It's well loved, on what makes great power exchanges. And I'm talking about how important it is for even the submissive to check in with themselves first, contrary to popular belief. I've had to do that all the time, right? This is part of the process, is checking in with oneself. And so, in a nutshell, the universe was pulling so many catalysts up for me. I was being forced, and I still am being forced, and I don't expect this to stop anytime soon on this path of sharing these deep, deep things. In a nutshell, the universe was pulling up all of these catalysts for me, and is continuing to. The universe was forcing me to reassess my whole journey, to align with my sexual true north even more. This isn't done. The journey is only winding on. If you told me 2 years ago that I was going to openly talk about sex work, and continue to, because this won't be the only video on this, if I was going to open up about all this stuff, I would have said hell no. Actually, this began over 2 years ago, but I was still in resistance to this for many good reasons. But also the ego, my ego really does not want to do this, you know? But that's the thing about growth, about healing, is the ego doesn't want to heal. We don't want to go through the pain, right? But it just keeps unraveling. And if we are to heal, if we are to grow, we must surrender. Yes, I, as a professional dominatrix, as a very defiant woman, I was a defiant girl too. As ironic as it sounds that I've been through abuse and all of that, things that are not marketable to my brand as a dom, but we're going to market them on Holistic Juniper here. Yes, trauma is not the sexiest thing to talk about. But you know what else isn't sexy? Is when your abuser is still in the room with you and you're trying to enjoy sex. I don't have that problem happening anymore because I've healed. And I want that healing for others in the world. That and more. What we resist persists. We must surrender. I am learning surrender every day. My path as a Buddhist dominatrix priestess, a Buddhist dominatrix priestess, it's been all about surrender. It's been all about submission now to showing up as a light worker in the world, to offering the service in the world of a variety that I did not expect. We can't plan it. We don't plan our healing. We must surrender. And we must have faith. Faith is required for this journey. Because if we don't have that, if we don't surrender, and we have every right not to, right? We just suffer more, though. We actually suffer more because what we resist persists. I must also stress that it is a co-creation. It is a co-creation with the universe and ourselves, just the same as it is a co-creation in a session between a submissive or a bottom and a top or a dominant. It's a co-creation, and a lot of people don't understand that, I realize. They think that this is all about the dom controlling the whole thing, and it's not necessarily the truth. I could really go down this path of talking about it, but I'll save that for another video. Back to summer of 2023 right here. Let's go to it. I'm here to help people grow. I'm not here to give you the candy. Medicine's bitter sometimes. That cold plunge is going to be fucking cold. And then I'm gonna bust through the coldness, and I'm gonna be able to like swim around a little bit in there. That's how it goes till we evolve to the next pinnacle, to the next precipice, and step out onto the edge of the precipice. It's time to jump. You ready? Let's do it. Okay, this water is 55.2 degrees. Pretty cold. Must be 2 minutes if I was able to swim around that much. That was started out with resistance when I got down to it, before I got into the water, I mean. And I'm again proud of myself for doing it, and it's really just so cool to get to swim in Mother Gaia. I just love it so much. I really can't wait till the day when I jump into a lake with Rasta and we swim together. That's definitely a motivation for this. So thank you for joining. Like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow in day 17. Day 17.